The day dawned bright and clear, gentle breezes rustling the trees around him as Mourngrym, Lord of Shadowdale, walked alone in the woods of Shadowdale. Birds sang in the warm morning, and from afar he could hear the faint lowing of cattle. It was a morning that, had it befallen on any other day, would have lifted his heart into song and brought a smile onto his face. But the Lord of Shadowdale walked along with his face dark and closed, and his thoughts plunged into grey despondency. For this day was the day of the drawn sword, with all its gaiety, hubbub, and crowding that inevitably accompanied its festive event, and he faced it all alone, without his lady to both gladden his eyes and set all the folk proud and low at ease together. Cheryl was gone to Shuzail to bury an uncle taken by the gods, and she taken with her a sealed tarniver. Chatelaine of the Tower. For a 10 day now, Mourngrym and all the folk of the tower had suffered under the hard hand and sharp-edged tongue of Orlindia, the under-chatelaine, and the Lord Mourngrym had more than once felt moved to draw steel and end common misery, in the busy wagging of his biting, shrewish tongue together. But scions of noble houses of Waterdeep, and lords even of small dales, don't cut down lone women in their blood just for being themselves. And so Mourngrym walked alone in the earthy morning, his sword still in his sheath, and anger burning in his heart. Even the knights of Myth Dranor had left him, riding off in haste yesternoon at a word from Elminster, who came down the chimney as a grey swift and left again by the same way an instant later, as a plume of grey smoke, quite spoiling Mourngrym's high sun tea. They had all left him alone to face all the tumult of the day of the drawn sword. Once a year the festival came, in high summer, a day of feasts and spectacles and contests of arms, when the Lord of Shadowdale thanked and feted his militia, and took on new men-at-arms to defend the dale from those who shone well in the contests. Tales were told of the dangers of the lost and ruined Myth Dranor, rising deadly in the dark hearts of the woods to the east. Now that the elves were gone, it was the haunt of creatures that should have been dead, and worse. Whenever a patrol or a curious boy strayed too close, death came for them, bloodily. The knights of Myth Dranor spent much of their time heading off treasure-seekers from swift and certain deaths in the ruins. Mourngrym worried all the time about the monsters of Myth Dranor, deciding someday that Shadowdale was close enough and a fool easily caught folk to eat, and... During the festival, by tradition, some brave soul had to go and spend the night in Myth Dranor. Usually they were never seen again. Who would go this time? There was always Elminster, of course. His spells would keep him safe, but you could only do that once, and Mourngrym didn't want to use up the old mage's turn yet. Better to have him still in reserve, so... Who? The problem was only at what weighed down Mourngrym's spirits. His head was beginning to ache already. The common folk for several days' travel around invaded every nook and cranny of the tower, laughing and shouting and breaking things, eating his larders bare and drinking his cellars dry. A sizable number of small, easily concealed objects always seemed to go missing in their wake, too, and the Lord of the Dale was expected to play the genial host through it all, toasting and greeting daughters by name, giving squalling and noisome brats kisses for good luck, and suffering the supercilious giggles of small girls and the mischievous pelting of small boys armed with ready missiles, nuts and spiced shelled eggs from the feast tables usually, with good-natured smiles. Mourngrym heartily hated the whole festival. He'd gone out early purely to have some quiet moments to himself before all the shouting started, but it was not God's willing to be. Ahead of him were the trees, then to give way to the small mill yard. He heard young voices raised. Already? Mourngrym sighed and looked about, but the trees stood thick all about, and the path led nowhere else. He went on, handing going to sword hilts out of habit. I am Florin the Tall. Taste my steel foul, Zent! The joyful, high-pitched bellow was followed by a very real shriek of pain and fright. Mourngrym hastened around the last bend of the path and nearly charged into the midst of a small pack of boys. They turned startled faces to him, gasping, and the moments erupted into full, crashing light. Hold! Mourngrym's stern command fell upon empty air. Curved branches and stout cudgels bounced and rolled off the turf in their wake, and the Lord was alone once more. Well, not quite. In the mud on the pond side of the grassy hillock lay a huddled fawn in torn leather, It sobbed quietly, and Mourngrym hastened to its sudden apprehension. He took hold of the shoulder gently and rolled the boy over, evoking another short scream of fear. "No! No!" came a terrified voice through the mud and what seemed like a lot of hair. Mourngrym shifted some of it aside with a finger, and discovered that he was staring into the tear-filled, astonished eyes of a young girl. They stared at each other for a moment, the girl's quick, ragged breathing only sound between them. Mourngrym's practiced eyes saw that she might be rather beautiful without the tears, and tear and all the mud. She might have seen 11 summers, certainly no more. "Are you all right?" he asked gravely, offering her his hand. She rolled over slowly, wincing. The hilt and rusty blade of an old sword, broken off short long ago, fell from the folds of a too large leather jerkin she wore. Mourngrym plucked it away. She shivered and bit her lip. Her fingers found the torn and sliced leather of a cut it had made, probed beneath, and came back to him with their tips red with blood. Mourngrym growled, and the girl shrank back from him with another involuntary sob. I'm all right, sir." Mourngrym held up his bloody fingers for her to see. "I fear not," he replied, and reached for the lacings of his jerkin rather grimly. "How did you come to be here? Who swung this sword?"
We were playing at defending the dale, sir."
Mourngrym saw only a small stain on the tunic beneath and felt some relief. Only a small cut, then. His fingers probed again, gently. Yes, she'd be fine. He took her hand and weighted tail of a tunic into a ball and gathered her hands to press it firmly against the cut. She sniffed. "With a real sword?" The girl sniffed again.
"It's Nan's, sir. He found it by the bridge. He thinks it's the one the Lord Mourngrym broke fighting off the Zentala."
Mourngrym's eyes went to it, lying old and worn in the grass beside them. "No," he said shortly. "That was never mine." The girl stiffened in a mid-sob and shrank away from him. Her eyes were very round. She gasped, You, Lord Mourngrym?" Mourngrym rolled his eyes, sighed, and nodded. "Hey, I'm Mourngrym. How are you called?"
"Aleth, Lord."
Mourngrym nodded. By now he knew they would be looking for him from top to bottom of the tower. Soon enough soldiers would be sent all over the dale to seek him out. He looked down again at the terrified girl bleeding in the mud. "Up then, Aleth," he said firmly, and hauled her to the feet with an arm about her shoulders. "Tell me now, how came this nun to strike at you?"
"Please, Lord. Fina and me, we're always the Zents. The boys make us. They play the knights."
Mourngrym shook his head and picked up what was left of the old blade. "I must go, Aleth," he said with a sigh. "You know what this day brings." The girl nodded. "I lay this command upon thee," he said then, formally, his eyes seeking out hers and holding her wondering gaze steadily. "Go, without tarrying and turning aside to any other task, to the white and green pavilion closest to the tower walls and in the meadow, and say that I sent you. Understood?" Aleth nodded in silence. Mourngrym patted her shoulder awkwardly. "Good. Don't delay now. And keep that hand pressed against where you're caught. Don't try to look at it." Aleth nodded, sniffing again. Mourngrym gave her a smile and ran back the way he had once come. Gods, not morning feast yet. And already things were going wrong. The glimmerings of an idea made him smile despite all, as he sprinted through the trees back towards the road. He looked back once to wave at the girl to follow. She was coming after him. Good.